Ah, Resident Evil, how dear you are to us, making our hearts flutter in both joy and fear. What's up, everyone, and welcome to Los Peleoneros Podcast thingy. Yes, that is now the official name of our podcast. In today's episode, Geno, Frank, and our new guest and good friend James and I take a look at the horror survival, sometimes horror action series, Resident Evil. We speak on the joy of the games and of the impact the series continues to have on our love of gaming. We take the time to appreciate the world Capcom has created while also being critical of the mistakes it has made. There's no holding back here. We also spend some time sharing some stories about certain items in our collections, some of which are only valuable to us. I think this episode really emphasizes to you, the listener, how passionate we are about the games we love. It's my hope that if you've been away from Resident Evil or gaming in general, that the tales we share here will bring you back. Enjoy the chat, and I'll be back at the end of the show. All right. So welcome to episode 2 of our podcast. You got Bobby here, formerly Mushi. We decided to just do away with all the what do we call them? Gamer tag names or pseudonyms, and we just stuck with the names we know each other by because we're all good friends here, and we hope you're our good friends. And if you're not, well, whatever. We don't care. We just do this for ourselves anyway. So tonight's episode, we're looking at talking about Resident Evil. That's a series close to all our hearts. And this is going to be a little bit different where in the last episode, each of us talked about our own personal series. This one we're talking about a series that we all love very much. And we have a new member with us today. I'll go ahead and introduce everyone. We got James here joining us today for the first time.
Hello, how are you?
And we have Frank, who was Miranda last time, coming back for another episode.
Hey.
And of course, the all-purpose commentator, Geno, over here. No longer Gino, G-I-N-O, just typical G-E-N-O, Geno. So,
hey,
that's all he's got. He's a nervous wreck all the time. All right. So, we'll start off with some questions, and then we're going to discuss some of our experiences with Resident Evil, as well as a little bit of a history, how we feel it's changed, whether it's for the better, for the worse, a little bit of that. But first, to start with our questions, we're going to go with our 2 favorite pieces. And I guess we'll do this round robin style. This, of course, is going based on us having collections. We'll start with you, James, since you're our new guest here, and we'll put the pressure on you to start with off. What are your 2 favorite pieces and why?
All right, so I'm not much of a collector here. So I'm more of a player than a collector.
What kind of player are we talking about?
Well, more successful in one area than the other, I would say.
I still think that player part needs more elaboration.
He plays the games.
I play the game.
Thank you, Frank.
So I still have my original Resident Evil 2 PlayStation.
And 3.
And 3, yeah, that's correct. I do have both of those. So those are my oldest pieces. I still have them. Still in great condition. Still in the original boxes.
Oh, you cut off suddenly. I was expecting more. So these PS1s, we're talking about jewel cases here?
If you call them that, yeah.
Is there another?
I'm not a collector, so I don't know these. I don't know these collector. These are collector terms.
No, it's not.
It's not.
Just that plastic case was always
case.
called a jewel case.
Okay.
So it's not the big box.
No, it's the original CD cases, and not the DualShock version.
Oh, okay.
And not the what is it? The
Greatest Hits?
Greatest Hits version.
So the original.
And they're the first ones I ever bought, and those are not rebuys.
So how long ago were we talking about when you bought them?
Ooh, man, I guess what it was
98 when it came out,
when
right?
it came out.
Okay, so when they originally came out.
Still in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're kind of dating ourselves here a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's okay. And by dating, I mean we're talking about how old we are, not that we're dating each other. God damn it. So podcast ruin. Let's move on now. So James has shared with us his 2 pieces. Frank, if you'll please continue.
Okay, so one of them is going to be the Biohazard 5th anniversary, the silver case that up to that point it had come. Let's see, which games had come out? Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3. They actually had an empty spot in the case for Code Veronica. I think was it? Or was it 4?
I don't remember.
I don't remember exactly. I'd have to look at it again. But it's this nice, beautiful silver case. It's got some little trinkets in there, like a keychain and the Wesker Report DVD. It's really, really nice. It's this beautiful metal briefcase. And I have to show it to you. I don't know if I ever showed it to you.
I don't think I've ever seen it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
So
sounds
there's
cool.
that one. And then, so this is kind of cheating, but the other one is actually all of the Resident Evils on GameCube, because that was the first time I had all of the Resident Evils on one system. So that's including from 1. I'm sorry, let me start from chronologically. 0, the remake, 2, 3, which are ports, and Code Veronica, and then 4. And I just love those pieces so much because they're in nice, longer plastic, long boxes as opposed to just the jewel cases. But I mean, this is one of my favorite series to collect for. Actually, I think this rivals my Silent Hill collection just in amount. Well, actually, it surpasses it as far as money goes, and we'll get to that later. But so the Resident Evil, all the titles on GameCube plus that silver case, those are my favorite pieces.
Very
All right,
cool.
Geno.
You're up, Geno.
So, yeah, I think me and Frank actually we started collecting things in tandem. Not everything, but Resident Evil for a while. We did that, and I was gonna say what he said, but we got the last year they did the typewriter for 2, the collector's edition for 2. Maybe we'll go into a longer story.
We're
about
talking
that.
about the remake of
The
2.
remake, right? So we bought that $1,000+ edition. So that definitely that. And then to kind of differ from his a little bit, I bought the Leon Kennedy armor, the body armor.
Yeah, that's right.
So that definitely would be my favorite, one of my favorite pieces too. Yeah, those would be my 2.
And that was the Japanese exclusive armor, right?
Yeah, right.
It was directly from
From
Capcom?
Capcom. Mm-hmm.
For CAPCOM,
Yeah.
that's what it was. And in case you don't know, CAPCOM, it's a Japanese. It's Japanese mail order where they have exclusive items, which are usually those really beautiful collector pieces. I think actually the 5th anniversary was an Capcom exclusive, was it? At
Yes,
one point?
the case, yes.
Yeah. And then, yeah. Anyway, so that's what Capcom is, because that's where you can also find like Street Fighter stuff and everything like that. Check it out. If you ever want to buy anything from Japan directly, go to Capcom. Free advertising.
That was
Yeah.
a commercial break right there,
that's,
folks. So this vest that you got for Leon's character, this is Resident Evil 2, Leon?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
was this? Did you wear this vest for Halloween?
No, I actually
Okay, right.
bought another costume
That was
for
different, right?
I really want to wear it for Halloween, but I don't think I'll ever take it out of the box because it's too pretty. Which is much the problem when you collect.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes those things just, you don't feel that they're worth taking the trouble. It's worth the trouble to get them out.
Yeah. No.
All right. So, Mr. Bobby, what's your favorite?
So, I haven't really been much of a collector of Resident Evil so much, but I really do enjoy the series. The first piece I owned that I no longer own that got me into the series was Resident Evil 2 on N64, but unfortunately, I don't have that piece anymore.
Oh.
And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But the piece I do have around the same time when I was in college I bought was the Resident Evil remake. And that one on GameCube I still have, and it's still in perfect condition. And it's still a game that I revisit every now and again, just because it's such an amazing game. You know, the PlayStation 2 was coming out, or had come out, but they didn't have the same fidelity on their games that GameCube games had. And you could see it with games like that Resident Evil remake, and you could see it in other games like Luigi's Mansion when it came out, and Rogue Squadron 2. The graphical fidelity in those games was incredible, and it showed all the way through Resident Evil remake. And then the other piece is actually another Resident Evil remake, but it was actually I got it from Frank. He had an extra copy, right? This is your second copy of yours that you had? Or you had...
Yes? Yes, because I had ordered one from Play Asia, and the other one I got from... I don't remember exactly where.
Was it that you weren't expecting it to come in, or...
Something like that.
Yeah.
I had ordered 2 just in case, because it was during the time when they would just cancel orders and stuff like that. So I ordered 2, one with the CAPCOM extra, box.
Right.
The Stars Vials box, in addition to that Biohazard Collector's 8.
So that Biohazard Collector's, of course, is a Japanese exclusive because it was a physical release of the Resident Evil remake, and there was never a physical release for it on PS3 here, right?
Actually, there was.
There was a physical release on PS3?
No, not here. Not for
No.
PS3.
Not for PS3, because there was one on the Wii.
Right. It was
Just
PS4.
Asia, yeah, but that has the
Right, there's
subtitles.
a PS4 one. And so yeah, this one is a Japanese version of Resident Evil, so of course it's called Biohazard. But it comes in a nice large case. It comes, of course, with a game. It has a book in there, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like a map too, I think.
Yeah, Frank is actually here opening up. I've never actually opened it because it's too pretty, and he just grabbed it and started opening up without asking. Thanks, Frank. So
Yeah, so there's the art guidebook,
oh yeah, so it's an art book,
and then the
and
game.
of course you have the actual game, and then a white box holding the game in place,
Yeah.
which is the best part. It's the part I'm most impressed with.
Yeah, the if you play this version, it's all in Japanese. But what I was remembering is that I had ordered the Asian version, which is got English and Japanese.
The Asian version has it because,
and it
of course,
actually has
for the rest of
flippable
Asia.
art
Mm-hmm.
to where you can, or the cover to where you can put Resident Evil or Biohazard depending on your preference.
Okay, cool.
Which I think I don't know how to put this back in. Here.
It's great. It's never gonna go back in the box now.
Yeah.
Oh, there's all that. Hey,
I'll get it. So, yeah, those are my 2 pieces that I'm happy to have, and one of them was, fortunately, from my good friend Frank here. Oh, look, there's some more stuff in here.
Yes.
That Frank didn't take.
I think it's the big
the map.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
the map, that's
it's the
right.
map of the mansion, and that thing is gorgeous. Like
Yeah.
that's
This
something,
is something
you
I should probably frame.
Yes, exactly.
So I might look into doing that. So let's talk about framing now, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Sorry, not framing.
Well, I
All
have
right.
some very awesome tips for you.
Well, it's because I still need to frame that Yakuza poster you got me as well. I need to go around
Oh,
start
yeah,
buying
that's
stuff.
Right.
Because I got a couple other things to frame, but we'll talk about that another time.
Mhm.
So moving on to question number 2. So I guess maybe we can talk about this, Jared. We can go around. But we're talking about missing pieces, things that we would like to have in our collection that we don't have.
Jeez. Get ready for a
James,
list.
would you like to start first?
Oh boy.
I think maybe James and I should go first on this one, then we'll let you guys finish off.
So this is gonna sound weird because this one wasn't very popular. But I had it at one point, and I honestly don't remember what happened to it, which is gonna be the Resident Evil Dead Aim, and I actually enjoyed it for some reason. Those of you who don't know, Resident Evil Dead Aim was, I guess, a sequel to
Yes, it's part of the Survivor series.
Technically, yeah. And so that one actually came or is compatible with the GunCon. I don't know if you
GunCon
remember.
2.
GunCon 2, that's correct. GunCon 2, because the GunCon 2 actually had a D-pad on it, which was required in order to move the character. This was not on rails at the time, right? So you actually had to move the character, and then when you went into a kind of like an aiming stance, it would go into first person, and then you can aim and shoot. Light gun. You had to have a CRT TV in order to use it, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed that game for whatever reason. And I had the GunCon, I had the game, and to be honest, I really don't remember what happened to it, and I kind of missed that game.
You want me to fill you in? Because I can actually tell you.
Okay, he remembers more than I do. Did I give it to you?
You gave it to me.
All right, I gave it to you.
Now, the funny thing is, though, is that I don't know exactly where it's at. It's somewhere in my storage, but I mean, I have Dead Aim there, but I don't know where the GunCon is. So
All right, so he has my original Dead Aim and that I bought.
Yes.
So
And that, if you honestly want it back, and
No,
and
no,
I'll buy a different one.
No. I would prefer it be in the hands of somebody who, is able to appreciate it more than I ever did. But
I do like how this story started out with, this is something I miss very much, but I gave it away to someone because I really didn't want it at the time. But you know what? I really want it back now.
Yeah.
No, I don't want it back. It's in safe hands with Frank. So
I don't know. He doesn't know where it's at.
No, it's the gun con. The gun
The
con
gun con.
itself. I know where the game is. It's in my PS2 library. It's the gun con itself. I'm pretty sure it's with all of my other kind of miscellaneous stuff.
Well, the other big question is, do you even have a CRT to play it on?
no.
Okay, so for those of you kids at home who don't know what a CRT TV is, they were TVs that existed before the typical flat screens that we have nowadays. And long story short, I mean, they just used light beams from the gun in order to detect where the pixel was on screen. And so without a CRT TV, you're kind of out of luck. You can't play
Yeah,
on,
it will not work on any
these
kind of
LCD,
high
plasma,
definition.
LED.
It will
LEDs,
not
yeah.
work at all.
You know what though? Actually, I do have a light gun that works on flat screens like modern TVs, and it does work on the PS2, but it doesn't have the D-pad on it. So you can play stuff like Time Crisis 2, Time Crisis 3, but you can't play Resident Evil Dead Aim because it's missing that part of it.
Yeah, because it absolutely needs that D-pad.
That's how you move.
Yeah, that's how you move the character around. Which, like I said, is, I like it that it took it off rails from the Survivors,
Survivor, the very first Survivor wasn't on rails. It was actually just tank controls in first person.
That's right.
But then 2 was Code Veronica on rail shooter. 3 was actually Dino Crisis on rail shooter, and then technically Dead Aim was the 4th one, but it went back to being third person until you were actually shooting.
Until you aimed and shot.
Yes.
So yeah, that's one I kind of miss. I would like to play it again one of these days. It's probably looking at it through rose-tinted glasses because it's probably not a very good game.
Come on, man! I love Survivor, and I know that game is terrible.
And I actually played through Survivor too, and it was not very good, I admit. But it was, it has its place in.
It has its charm.
Yeah, it has its charm.
My argument is that it has its charm. It's still a Resident Evil game. It's still a better game than Resident Evil 6, but I'm not going to argue that right now. So, Bobby, what do you miss, or what would you like to add?
The thing I miss is the thing I brought up earlier. Is the very first Resident Evil game I ever played was Resident Evil 2, but I specifically played it on the N64 when I was in college. Bought a copy of it. The group of guys I lived with, they had a PlayStation. But at the time, they didn't have any Resident Evil. And I saw Resident Evil 2, heard good things about it, wanted to try it out. Of course, I had no idea about the differences in compression technology because you're taking a game that was designed to fit on a CD, which at the time, a CD-ROM held 750 megabytes, and it was transferred to a 64 megabyte cart. And the fact that they were able to get that game on there looking as good as it is, even though they had to do video compression and audio compression, it's amazing the job the team did for that. And it wasn't even a Capcom team. They used a third-party company. I don't even remember what they're called. But I wish I remembered the YouTube video that I watched where they went over it in detail. I know Frank and I have both seen that because I think you're the one who told me about it.
Yeah, actually, and I think they said that the music at certain points is actually higher quality than the PlayStation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and that really has more so to do with the audio chip in the N64 than the actual audio itself. Mm-hmm. It's just it was able to decompress at a rate so that way it would still give you the same audio quality, if not better. But the FMVs are the ones that took the big hit because they had to force those full motion videos to fit in that cart and still be able to play. Now the good thing is
they're
no
still
load
complete
times.
Though. I mean,
oh yeah, the FMVs are still complete. It's not
the
game
is
not missing anything.
Yeah, it's not missing anything. It's just at certain points the quality you notice a dip, but the actual game itself looks cleaner because it's got this blurry kind of look to it, but it still looks cleaner overall compared to that original PlayStation release.
Right.
But
so aside from the full motion videos, I think it would be the better game to play. if you were to choose between the two systems. But what was it I was going to bring up? I forgot what it was. If I remember, I'll come back to it.
You'll remember once you listen to this podcast.
Yeah, we're like, oh yeah, I was going to bring that up.
We'll add it in post.
Well, there we go.
Well, you know what? I'm still gonna buy a box copy of the 64, so I can give you my loose one that I have.
Oh, I didn't realize you had a loose one on 64.
Yeah.
I should have known you had one.
So you can have that one. That way you can complete at least that part.
At least that portion of it.
Yes.
And of course, I mean, there's other pieces I want to get because I don't have Resident Evil 1, 2, or 3 or Code Veronica.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have. Well, I guess we'll talk a little bit more of that, but I do have pretty much all the rest of the games.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have the original 3 that started except for the remake of 1. You know, and so that's it. But yeah, that's the big piece of missing because that's the one that brought me into Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for that game, I never would have played Resident Evil. I never would have enjoyed the nights that me and my fraternity brothers sat in one of the dorm rooms and had speakers under the couches playing Resident Evil 3. So whenever Nemesis came out, went stars, and he would be launching grenades and stuff at him. You know, that was a really good experience. And without that Resident Evil 2, I would not be having this conversation with these guys right now. All right, so Geno.
I'll defer to Frank first.
No, I went first last time. You have to go.
Okay. So what are we missing?
Yes.
We're talking about missing pieces.
There's too much. So I'll just say.
Just give us one.
Resident Evil 2 Collector's European version
yes,
for the remake?
That's it. Thank you very much, Frank. That would be it. And then maybe
For the remake.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So what's in it?
It's the same thing as the U.S. collectors, except there's a set of keys. And to get the stupid set of keys, you have to spend like $700 because that's what it's going for now. And the idiot like myself that's going to pay the $700 just because there's a hole there in my collection. Yeah, so I would say that one. And then also Resident Evil 2 for N64. I mean, that's actually, I was going to get that last year, but I didn't, so.
So you
So
don't
I
have
will.
to copy it all
I'm
then,
going to, yes.
But you will.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah, those would be the two.
Yeah, I do. So, yeah, it's me again. So, I do.
Hello, it's me.
Who are you again?
The 64, yeah, I do want that boxed, you know, just any boxed copy from Nintendo to N64 that, you know, just beautiful. Those pieces are just so beautiful. So I definitely want that. As far as, let's see, upcoming stuff, Resident Evil 3 Remake. Right now, I'm going to say it's missing, even though I don't have it, is the Resident Evil 3 Remake, the CAPCOM exclusive version, which is exactly the same as the collector's from the US, except it has a physical soundtrack as opposed to just a digital, because physical only.
Yeah,
digital when it comes to soundtracks is pretty useless. I mean, unless it's streaming through a service.
Yeah.
But yes, I would prefer the physical to have it as a backup.
Nobody wants the Resident Evil 6 $1,000 leather Leon jacket.
Well, we'll get into the grands here in just a minute.
Let's see. So there's that, which I'm hoping I won't miss. The Resident Evil 3 Remake, the eCapcom version, and
For both of us.
For both of us, the PC copies, the big big box PC copies of 1, 2, and 3. I really want those, and those are more just show pieces. And then actually,
wait, those PC versions are there North American versions of those?
Yes, for all 3 of them.
I didn't realize those were released on PC.
Mm-hmm. Actually, and I remember the Resident Evil 2 one because it said Platinum on it. It was Resident Evil 2 Platinum on PC, and I remember seeing it at EB Games, and it was like $50, and I'm like, well, I don't have a PC. I mean, you know, in hindsight, of course, there's
at the time you're not collecting either, so
yeah, exactly. So those PC ones, and then just kind of like variations for Resident Evil 1. I have the long box. I have the collector's or the director's cut. What I'm missing is the regular original game, but in the jewel case.
Yeah.
So it's the in between the long box and the director's cut, and then a couple strategy guides. I need the original Resident Evil strategy guide. I only have the director's cut strategy guide for that one, so I want that.
So as you guys can tell, Frank is a true connoisseur of Resident Evil.
Hey.
I wouldn't even say connoisseur, just...
We got two.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, we do have both, but he actually goes into detail while you...
Oh, I leave it kind of dry.
You just leave it vague.
Yeah.
It's like, I have this thing and it needs a key.
Yeah.
It's like, what are the keys for?
You know,
Who knows?
One thing I do
That's what it cost me.
One thing I have to bring up is that Geno managed to get a copy of the Resident Evil 2 remake Pix and Love European Edition. It's this oversized kind of red box, bigger than a normal game. It has like a key card in there. What else did it have in there, Geno?
Yeah, an art book and I think that's it. It
Yeah,
was
it
the
was
art
like
book and some art cards. There were some art cards in there too.
That's right. And Geno actually managed to grab one of these guys at regular price, whereas I had to pick it up aftermarket on eBay for, I think, literally... no, not that much. But about 5 times as much as it was originally costing. So, I hate you scalpers, and vultures, and all of you who just buy it to flip it.
Yep.
That really upsets me.
Yep.
But... So actually, I'm ahead of Geno on that one. I've got all versions of Resident Evil 2 Remake and Collector's versions.
So he's ahead of you by one.
By one
By
piece.
one.
In that. He's
And we'll see
Geno's
for how
piece.
long. So, okay, so this is a good time to come in and say that me and Frank, we had already been collecting Resident Evil for a long time, both of us. But then one day we just decided to do all of it together, and it almost became like we'd have to do it like at the same time, otherwise one of us was always trying to catch up to the other. So when Resident Evil 2 Remake was announced, I think we started. We got the case together.
Hold on, you got to hold that story, man, because we're not at that question yet.
Actually, we are.
Are we?
We've all gone through our missing pieces.
Okay, so what's the question?
What? Okay, so the question is, what is the most expensive piece?
Okay, well,
Oh, man.
all right. So here we go.
So we'll let you guys go first. I don't even think James and I have input on this.
I don't have input on this.
Okay.
All right,
I just want to play the game.
So
He's just a player.
yeah, that's right.
Player here.
So I think, me and Frank, we got the case together. I think maybe like a couple weeks apart, and then we got something else together. I think we've been doing the CAPCOM stuff together too. So then when they announced that this
Resident Evil
typewriter,
2
yeah,
Remake, there's an Capcom version that included a Bluetooth typewriter. Both the collector's edition, which was a Resident Evil 2 Z version, which is like the least edited version in Japan, plus the typewriter, cost a total of $1,200 with shipping.
okay, that was it. Was that how much? Yeah, okay.
$1,200. Well, it was $1,179.
Yeah.
I will round up. If you will forgive me the $21.
We'll give you the $21.
So the best part, and I'll never forget, and this is why I collect. Okay, so they said they're going to do this announcement, like it was really secret. On this day, tune in at this time to find out what the eCapcom is going to be. So I'm there up early, I have a class, I'm waiting, and it finally shows up that you get this typewriter and you get the collector's edition, or you get the typewriter by itself. And the typewriter by itself was $700, and then the collector's edition plus the typewriter was $1,000. So of course I don't want just the typewriter, I want the set, right? So I tell Frank, we're in text. Okay, so it's up, but you're not gonna like it. And so he said, well, what is it? So I tell him, and then I give him the price, and immediately, I mean, we're talking seconds, he's like, oh, that's ridiculous. I'm not doing that. In text, okay, and you could see all the emotion in the text. So then a few seconds pass, and he's like,
No, it was,
okay.
I want to say roughly about 2 minutes. It was
Okay.
a couple minutes, but I paused, and I thought, wow, but that's a really nice typewriter. That's a really nice collector's edition.
And then to take him over the edge, I sent him the message that said, well, it really would be it'd be the cherry Resident Evil 2 piece. And then he said, well, how much? I said, I'll do it if you'll do it.
No, yeah.
But, right?
I was like, oh, man, that's ridiculous. Well, it'd be a really nice piece. And I'm like, if you do it, I'll do it. And then so, I mean, that same day, it's
same
like...
day.
Yeah, same day, it's like, all right, man, I just got my confirmation. Did you? And Geno's like, yep. But see, the funny thing is, is that thing sold out.
That's what I was
This
gonna ask.
$1,200 like set, the typewriter and the collector's edition, which is hilarious actually, because it would have been cheaper if you bought them separately, because the typewriter was $700, the collector's edition was $200.
Yeah. So to have them packaged together
was an extra $200
Yeah.
in hindsight, because we thought it would sell out, which is why we're like, no, we just got to order it all
let's do it
together.
now.
Whereas now on like Nin and I think even on eBay, you can still get the Japanese version of Resident Evil 2 Remake Collector's Edition for less than $200.
Yeah.
Which you don't want to actually play that version because it's the edited version.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the cop's getting pulled through and he has his legs. What is up with that?
Yeah.
He's supposed to lose his legs.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Man, it's in the trailer.
Yeah.
It's in the trailer.
And it was in the demo.
And it was in the demo.
Just a message to our editor, Mike. When you edit this, make sure to include that footage so you can see the
There you
difference.
Both versions. Both the real version and the Japanese Z rating version, which, in case you don't know, Japan edits their games, the violence, a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, normally you get the United States one. The United States versions of almost everything are the least edited out of all of them, except for, funnily enough, the original intro for Resident Evil, which was edited here
And not edited in Japan.
and not edited in
That's
Japan.
right.
They had the cigarette smoking Chris. They had a longer shot and in color of Joseph getting attacked and I think the hand.
Oh, right, the hand. Yes.
That hand that was still
Attached to the gun.
attached to the gun.
Yeah.
That's right.
But
Oh, they'll show boobies, but they won't show somebody getting their legs cut off.
But hands down, that was one of my favorite collecting moments of my entire life, because it was so bizarre, and I never so quickly had I just said, let's spend $1,200 right now. Let's do it.
well, the fact that it was especially such a turn, because when I saw that number in that text, I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing that I have seen as a collector in my entire life. I'm like, this is over $1,000 for for this piece. I mean, like James had brought up the leather jacket. Like for me, the merchandise when it comes to that stuff, it's like I will never pay that for that kind of merchandise. I'm like, but since it is a game, it is game related.
Yeah.
That's when it went from this is ridiculous to man, but that's a nice piece. And it's there in my closet right now.
Yeah,
It's
mine
still
too.
it's still wrapped
It's
up.
still mine. Yep.
It's still boxed. The Z version of the remake collector's edition will always stay sealed because I'm not going to play that version at all ever. But yeah,
That's
so
a-
$1,200 on a collector's edition plus typewriter.
You guys?
And I'm like, just really, really quick to add on to that. Then a step below that was the Biohazard 5th Anniversary metal case.
Yes.
Which was $500
$500.
aftermarket.
$500.
And that was aftermarket though, because I think originally when it came out, it was only, I don't even remember. It was less than 200
Yeah,
for sure.
it's less than 200.
And then another thing that Geno and I had got together was the GameCube 10th Anniversary Collector's Edition. It was the box with the keyhole.
Right.
And it has all the GameCube versions. The Japanese ones, which are like smaller compared to the American GameCube cases,
Right.
I'd say they're about half the size. And so I got that, and he got that.
It's like what, a week, 2 weeks apart, something like that.
Something like that.
Something like that. Not long. Not long. How about you guys?
Wow.
Probably that piece, right? Bobby?
Yeah, that PS3
Biohazard?
Biohazard from Japan that Frank sold me.
It
It was
was
like $70, I think.
80. I think it was
Yeah.
80.
So it's probably the most expensive piece I have, regards to Resident Evil. So yeah.
I can't imagine spending that much money on something like
You
that.
don't have to. We've done it for you.
You know,
It was,
You can
I
live,
mean,
we
as
can
long
live
as I'm-
vicariously
yeah.
through.
yeah, I can live vicariously through you guys. I can look at it and be like, wow,
did somebody spend money on
somebody got money on that.
But when we open up our Resident Evil 2 Resident Evil Museum together, it will all have been worth it.
Yes.
Yes.
it will absolutely be worth it. I don't know for who, but somebody will appreciate it.
Yeah. Me and you, essentially.
Yes. Okay.
So, should we even bother with our least expensive piece question?
No, I think that warrants.
I think that covers. Oh, I will give you a story of my least expensive one. So, in like '98 when Resident Evil 2 came out, I knew it was around, but I couldn't buy games because all of my money was being funneled into the band I was in, and so they really frowned on whenever I bought a game. So I knew about it and I wanted it, but I couldn't buy it because they would just frown on it. I could have just not told them, but I don't know why I felt the compulsion to tell them. So I didn't get to buy it. So the following year in '99, I said, you know what? We'd just finished our record. I said, I'm gonna go buy Resident Evil 2, but I didn't have the money, and I really wanted it. So my dad sent me out to like I don't know, Circuit City or something to go get something for him. And so with his credit card, I bought the Resident Evil, just like under cover of darkness with his credit card, and I thought, he would catch on, and he never did. So, or he did, and he didn't say anything. So yeah, that was free. My Resident Evil 2 was free. And
did you buy what you were supposed to?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I bought that too.
And then you also bought the Resident
Which
Evil.
system was it for again? Say it again.
It was still just like PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1. Yeah,
okay.
PlayStation 1. So that was free. I'd say that qualifies as cheapest.
But at the time you bought it, full price was probably what, $40?
It's like $40, yeah.
Yeah, for those PlayStation games at the time.
I didn't buy shit.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, well, with inflation, it was probably around 60.
Yeah, probably.
But
I don't know. Frank bought me the remake.
Yes, and actually, that's gonna tie into mine. Is that I managed to find the Resident Evil remake on GameCube in 2010. I bought it sealed, brand new, for $17.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I would say that's probably my cheapest for nicest pieces because I even paid more than that for Resident Evil Survivor. Disc only through GameStop's. I'm trying to think. It was,
how did you not keep that?
What do you mean?
Resident Evil Survivor.
I think you had sold it because I never ended up with a copy of it, so I just ordered one through GameStop when they were still selling used games.
Did I have a copy? I played all the way through.
Yes, you had a copy. I don't know what happened to it, but I know that wasn't one that I ended up inheriting or absorbing at this point. So, yeah, I'd say that was probably the cheapest with it being kind of like a steal. And then the next least expensive was Resident Evil Deadly Silence on the DS, the cart only for $18, which I managed to find at a GameStop last year, which is impressive because Resident Evil Deadly Silence, how long has that been out? I mean, at least over a decade. And I managed to just still find the cart. It was in great shape. And I wanted to find the box for it. I haven't been able to for at least a non-ridiculous price. Yeah. But Geno and I did manage to buy the Resident Evil Deadly Silence Japanese import special edition.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
So at least I have a case for it. It's just not the American one.
We're getting around to fixing these issues shortly. So
yeah,
they won't be issues for long.
Your cheapest is going to be that Resident Evil 2 N64 cart only.
Once it ends up in my collection, yeah, it will be my cheapest. For now, my cheapest is probably the Wii version of Resident Evil 4.
Oh yeah, that's true. You know what?
That one came out fairly cheap, and then I got it, I think, for $10 when it finally came down. So
wait, didn't we give each other Resident Evil 4 for Christmas on the Wii?
You know what? Yeah.
Yes, don't you remember?
So I take it back. The copy I got you was $10. So.
So we bought each other the same gift, and we just traded hands essentially.
There we go.
You know what? That's actually my favorite version of Resident Evil 4 to play.
Yeah.
Because, with a controller, it plays well. You know, I played it when it first came out on GameCube, loved it, but just the ability to aim so quickly with that Wiimote and the crosshairs and everything, and it's just so comfortable to play.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4 on a Wii.
What, you didn't like the chainsaw controller?
I
For
never
the
got to
GameCube.
have it.
I've got it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Geno's
Geno
got
has
it.
a copy.
That's a piece
Or a
that
piece
he's
of
got that I don't. That I'm okay with it.
Can you even play the game on that controller?
Have you ever tried
I
it?
don't know. I haven't tried.
Have you seen people try? 'Cause I
I
have.
have.
Like
I
I
have.
watch YouTube videos.
It's still a cool piece. I'll argue with the both of them and
No,
say that it's
the
still cool to
collector's
look at.
as a
yeah.
piece. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It should not have been a controller. It should just not have been a controller at all. It should have just been like
A piece.
a piece. Yeah.
It should have been just like this little statue, this little,
I saw somebody on
Paperweight.
Twitch play Guitar Hero on it.
The Guitar Hero
Not my
using
first
that controller.
line of choice for controller. No.
Well, but props to him for getting
Making
through
the
that
attempt.
game.
Still not as impressive the guy who beat
Dark Souls
on a Guitar Hero
Oh wow. Yeah.
guitar.
Yeah.
So the circle of life. Right
Yeah.
there.
Yes, the circle
There you
of
go.
life. Okay, so moving on to the next set of questions now. These questions are specific to Resident Evil, and they are different than the questions we did in our last episode. So I'm going to go first on this one, probably because I've played Resident Evil the least. But the question is, what Resident Evils have you played and or finished? So obviously, Resident Evil 2 on N64 was the very first one I played, and I did finish that one. I did play through both Leon's and Claire's paths. Very enjoyable, which is what led me to game Resident Evil 0, which I have beaten on 2 occasions, but only playing it through as Chris. I've never played through as Jill. Yeah. And so I have finished the Resident Evil remake. I also got Resident Evil 0 at that point, which I did play through once. I think really only need to play through it once. I mean, I really enjoy it. For a lot of people, it's lower on the list. I thought it was really good, but there's not really any replayability unlike the other ones, I think. I don't know. I just think maybe because as opposed to picking a person and going through with them, you play both people at the same time, so you pretty much see everything there is to see the first playthrough, with the exception of missing some things along the way. So that was Resident Evil 0. Now, Resident Evil 4 was the next one I played, but I actually never finished Resident Evil 4. After I defeated, what was the little midget dude's name? Salazar.
Mm-hmm.
I was very low on ammo. I think after that was a cliffside mission where I then got to the facility where then I ran into those, I was going to
I think it's pronounced Felicity.
Felicity, sorry. I got to the Felicity. What were those, I was going to call them regurgitators. The ones that would heal themselves.
The regenerators.
Regenerators.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know how to defeat them. I found out years later that there's a infrared scope
you have to get.
and that you could kill them that way. But because I was low on ammo and I got frustrated, I felt like I was going to have to start over, and I never went back and did it. So now that I know the truth of how to do it, one of these days I will play through Resident Evil 4. I mean, now I have that Wii. I've had that Wii copy for a long time. But now you can play Resident Evil 4 on almost anything. Then
Even
of course,
on your phone.
even on your phone. And then there's RE5, which actually I never played through that one by myself. I played through that one with Frank. I bought the gold edition with all the extra stuff that came with it, and we played it together online because apparently playing that game on your own is a pain in the ass. Because what's your name keeps using Sheva keeps using health when she got hit once. She gives you the wrong ammunition. She doesn't pick up ammunition when you need it. So, it's ridiculous. But when we played through it, it was an interesting experience with Frank because he had already played through Resident Evil 5 on more than one occasion with James, right?
That's correct.
And so when I play with Frank, I'd be like, oh, what do we do? And he'd be like, hey, here's all this ammo, take all this, just follow me. And then he'd run and gun everything down and be like, oh, pew pew, a couple of zombies that were left standing behind, take them down or whatever was there. But it was still a really, really fun experience. And then skipped Resident Evil 6 for good reason. We probably won't be talking much about that one tonight. And then
Or maybe we will.
No, it went straight from 5 to 7. I don't know what you guys are talking about. There was no 6. There was no Revelations 2. Not that I know of. Not that I have anyway.
There was no Leon taking out a helicopter with a motorcycle.
Wasn't that in Wolverine?
No, please.
What?
Let's stop
The
talking about
Wolverine
six.
Origins?
And a variation of it.
It was like
Live for
jumped
your
off a
die hard.
motorcycle. Yeah, so anyway, Resident Evil, skipping over. Resident Evil 7. I never finished it. My experience with that one, actually, my brother-in-law bought it, and I was in San Antonio with them and with him, and we've got to play it on his VR. I played probably the first hour and a half of that game, and then I have a copy of it, but I haven't even opened it to play it. I do plan on playing it one day. And then coming
Did I
up,
give you that one? I think I did.
yeah, the Resident Evil 7 that you gave me. And then Resident Evil 2 was a gift to me from Geno.
Yeah, I got you the deluxe too.
Yeah, got me the deluxe copy, which really wasn't that deluxe, but
Yeah.
it was labeled deluxe.
It was labeled deluxe.
You know what? You try finding that deluxe version new now, it's over $100 for whatever
that's true.
reason. Which
I mean,
is
the
ridiculous.
name alone with the stuff it comes with, which is almost nothing.
Well,
It's
but-
nothing. It's honestly it's the lamest DLC minus the soundtrack, the classic soundtrack. You know, like to me, costumes that should not be DLC. That's like free stuff. It's skins. Like
Well, yeah, but
We all agree?
The
No,
cover,
no.
The way the
Oh,
cover,
the cover,
But it
yeah.
was the
cover
cover.
has Leon. Oh, he's nice. Like
The
he's
cover
there
alone
in the
is
rain
worth
is
it.
nice. So
It is a nice cover, so I did really appreciate it because it was a good looking one. But that one, Resident Evil 2, I did play and beat and right away. I've only played through Leon so far. I will eventually go back and play through Claire's. But that's where I'm at now with Resident Evil. And again, I never played the original one, only the remake. And I've never ever played Nemesis or Code Veronica.
Wow.
But you
Those
did. You did watch me mess up my speed run where I didn't save because I was like, "No, I've got this." And then the stupid Gravedigger killed me in 2 hits.
Yeah.
Whereas when I played it again, 4 hits and I'm still not dead.
Yeah.
It's just
And,
RNG, man.
you know, don't even get me started on it.
So yeah, that's where I'm at with that series, and of course all the side ones. Like I never played any of the outbreaks.
Gaiden.
Didn't play the Gaiden. Did not play the Revelations.
You didn't play 1 or 2?
Revelations?
Yeah.
No, I did the demo for 1.
Okay.
But I never got either of the games and tried to play through them. So I don't own those at all. And what else were we missing? Of course, the Dead Aim or what was
Survivors.
the DS one? Survivors
Or Survivor 2.
right, and then the DS one was
Deadly Silence.
Deadly Silence. Yeah, I haven't played any of those. So that's me, James.
All right, so yeah, I've played through a lot here. Of course, you know, back in high school, the original Resident Evil. That one was a tough one. People don't realize how tough games were back then. Nowadays, you know, Resident Evil 1, the first one, that was a tough one to get through. You want to go through with Jill because she has the lockpick and she has like the easier stuff.
Master of Unlocking.
Master of Unlocking.
You know what the funny thing is that so the Japanese it was the easy mode and hard mode. Jill was easy, Chris was hard. It's like so as the woman you were better prepared and you had better support. So actually Chris was the incompetent guy who can't get anybody to help him. So the only reason the game was harder is because he kind of sucked at his job.
Chris was an idiot.
Yeah.
Punches balls.
So yeah, you know, I started out Resident Evil 1. Of course, played through all the way through that. Both Chris and Jill. Resident Evil 2 was absolutely phenomenal. I probably played that one the most out of all of them. Memorizing 2.
Resident Evil 2.
Yeah,
Resident Evil 2 probably played that one the most. Pretty much can get through that in like an hour and a half.
About an hour and a half, 2 hours.
About an hour and a half to 2 hours.
We're not professional speedrunners.
No,
we're not
no.
Games Done Quick level, but
No.
Actually, we
But-
tend to call our speedruns anti-speedruns.
Played through it enough to where I know where everything's at. I know, you know, how the AI is going to react to certain situations and be able to get through the game. Yeah, I mean, you get through it pretty good. And all the different iterations of Resident Evil 2, of course, you know, like on the N64, the GameCube version. 3, played through 3 quite a bit too. That's another one of my favorites. Absolutely love 3. 3 would probably be the one I played the most next after 2. So, yeah. I did not touch 0, actually. I did not like it. Couldn't get through it. All right. I know some people have like that mechanic of switching back and forth between characters. I didn't particularly like it. I didn't think it was a story that needed to be told in the Resident Evil series.
They had to retcon the original game story to be able to tell Zero's story.
Yeah, in order to tell Zero. So, I didn't get through Zero. I just really didn't like it. Like I said, I played a little bit of it.
You didn't like it because of the mechanics or because of the story or combination?
Both the story and mechanics. Although I have to admit that a little bit of the story was a little bit interesting, especially with what's his name, Billy Cohn.
Okay.
Was a little bit interesting, but
it was like the Running Man.
Yeah, pretty much like the Running Man, but his backstory was pretty interesting as well. Other than that, there was really nothing. I didn't really need to know about where Rebecca Chambers was, before Bravo team showed up. It's just a story that didn't need to be told. So I didn't get through that. What's next? Code Veronica. I played all the way through Code Veronica. I love Code Veronica.
On Dreamcast. I remember when Dreamcast. You got it. You got it.
In fact, I bought a Dreamcast specifically for that game. That was one of the things I wanted to play the most.
That and Marvel vs. Capcom.
That and Marvel vs. Capcom. That was the original one. That was a good one. Dreamcast, great system.
I'm sure we'll do a Dreamcast episode here someday.
I played all the way through Veronica. I played all the way through through Survivor. Played all the way through Dead Aim. Some people would say those are probably the shittiest ones of all of them, but I played through them.
But apparently, it's because 6 hadn't come out yet.
Yeah. 6 hadn't come out yet, so...
There are a few contenders for the throne. And so.
6 is... to me, it's like a bloody punching bag. Like, you just hit it so much that your knuckles start to bleed, because at least that's how I feel about it. I just want to add this little comment in. I hated 6 so much that I popped it in, I played up to this title screen. There's this little prologue. I played up to the title screen. It takes maybe 2-3 minutes, and I stopped playing because I hated it that much right away. Some people say, "Oh, it's because you're listening to everybody else. You're listening to the hype." I played it the day I got it. I hated it from the get-go. So I was not influenced by anybody else's opinion. 6 deserves a hated guess.
No, I have to agree with you on that one. 6 was a bad one. But let's go back a little bit.
Remake. The remake.
Loved Remake. Absolutely phenomenal. The people who worked on Remake,
they got it right.
They not only got it right, but they actually cared a lot about... You could tell that they cared a lot about the source material. Mm-hmm. Absolutely phenomenal game. What else? 4. Played through 4. Loved it. A little different, I have to admit. Turned off a lot of people, but excellent game.
And it actually,
we'll be talking about that.
Turned on a lot of people more than it turned off.
Yeah. Well, it's I think it's got its mixed reactions, but absolutely great game. What else? 5. In fact, with 5, you do have to play it with another person online in order to enjoy it.
Not true. I played it all the way. It was fine. It was great.
I have to disagree with you on that.
No problems.
It's better.
It's way better when you have another competent person. That AI, Sheva the AI, it was awful. Yeah, it's difficult to get through on a single player.
And don't even try playing with professional mode without a second person.
Yes.
If you're trying to depend on the AI for professional mode, you might as well just not play.
So Frank and I played it on the hardest difficulty, which is professional mode, online.
Professional mode is what, one
so
hit
that is one hit down.
Right. One hit takes you all the way to danger.
To danger, and you have what, 2 seconds? Maybe 2 seconds to revive that person, if that. So if you're not standing right next to that person when they get hit, the game's over. You're done. And so another thing on that one is, I hate quick time events.
I was about to bring that up.
I hate them with a passion.
And you have less time to react to the quick time events. We died literally. I think I counted about 36 times when we were on the
The ship.
When what's her name?
Zelica or Xela?
Yeah.
No, Gianna. What's her name? Oh my God, Excella. When she turns into the Ouroboros like giant phallic thing, and she's chasing you. I mean, because there's, I want to say 5 or 6 times that there's quick time events, and if you die at any of them, it takes you all the way back to the beginning. Of that sequence.
Yeah.
And James sucks at quick time events.
I hate them. I can't stand quick time events.
Yeah, because you suck at them. But yes, I can understand why.
No, but remember there were times where
I messed up.
Yeah, I messed up.
I totally.
So I was like getting good at them, right? And then as soon as I got good, then he would mess up.
Yep.
And then it would set us back again. But other than that, when you're playing 5 with another person, it's actually
fun.
It's fun. It is a fun game to play through. Even like on the hardest difficulty, and we even played the DLC.
Oh, the DLC, which is a fun fact, is that if you play the DLC multiple times, I think there's 3 or 4 levels in difficulty. So the first time you play it, it's okay. Second time you play it, gets harder. I think it is the 3rd level where it gets maximum difficulty. And if you're playing the Lost in Nightmares, instead of like one of those big hulks with the axe, there's actually 2 of them with the 3rd time you play it. And then the Desperate Escape, which is where you're playing as Jill and the other guy. What's his name?
Chris?
No, not Chris.
Sheva's friend.
Partner. Yeah, his partner.
Partner. I don't remember.
Or her partner, yeah.
But anyway, so that'll increase the amount of enemies that you have to fight when you're playing through, and actually the type of enemies. You have to fight the giant hooded man on the bridge at one point when you reach the maximum difficulty. So if you're going to play it with a partner, make sure it's one of the earlier time. Well, actually, just play with a partner all the time. That's the point.
So 5, I mean, as controversial as 5 is, when you're playing with another person, pretty fun. I'm not going to say it's great, but it is fun to play with. So yeah, I have played Revelations 1 and 2, didn't particularly like them all the way through.
You don't like 1?
It's okay.
I don't think it was as good as everybody
I don't
said
think,
it was.
yeah, as good as people say it was. It does have a lot of the, throwback mechanics. The story's pretty okay.
Well, Revelations 1 came out on the 3DS, right?
Originally, yes.
Originally,
yes.
Which is why I think it got a lot of the attention it did, because it was like, oh wow, look how they recreated this Resident Evil experience on 3DS.
And it looks amazing still on 3DS.
Yeah.
Right, but when you take that same concept and put it like on the Wii U or was it PS3 or PS4?
It was
both.
It was actually on both.
It was on both.
So it went from 3DS, it went to the Wii U, went to PS3, PS4.
Yeah.
So
I heard that once you then played on those consoles, then of course the experience isn't the same as if, because you have that thing where, I'm able to do this on a handheld versus, I'm doing the same thing. It's like when we talked about last time with the Grand Theft Autos on PSP.
Oh yeah.
But when you put them on Vita, or we were talking specifically about Silent Hill Origins.
Origins, yes.
Yeah, when they put it on the PS2, like maybe playing on the PSP, you're like, wow, but you play it on the when they move it to a console, it's like, well, maybe the transition isn't as good.
Yeah, it really isn't.
And I have to agree with that. Like I said, the story's it is kind of okay. Gameplay is a little bit of a throwback to the old school way.
More like 4. It's a cross between the classic and 4.
Yeah, it's a cross between. I would say that. But didn't particularly like them. I played all the way through. But Revelations 2 was just awful. I don't even know how I stomached that. I don't know why I kept going. What else? 7. I only watched people play it again because there is a little bit of a motion sickness factor to 7.
Primarily because it's first person.
Right? Well, first person with that wobble.
Gotcha.
There is a little bit of a wobble when they walk, when the person walks.
Yeah, the head bob.
The head bob, which is not realistic to a real person, but I can see where they're going with that. But from what I can gather, the story is pretty good. Ties some things in pretty well. It is what it is. I didn't play all the way through it because of that. but and then remake 2, absolutely phenomenal remake 2. One thing I have to say about remake 2, whoever the team at Capcom that worked on it, you can tell that they cared a lot about the source material, that they were,
Well, it was, if I'm not mistaken, Shinji Mikami, he fronted that project.
Yeah.
He was producer on the project because he was not satisfied with the original game. He did not think it aged well. He wanted to go back and actually do it the way he originally planned. Right? And Geno just came back. He stepped out. So, Shinji Mikami, he produced the remake as well, correct?
For
Two.
2?
No,
No.
the original.
No.
The original remake on GameCube.
I don't think so, no.
But if I know he was not happy with the original Resident Evil with the first
Oh, yes. Well, maybe he... I don't quite remember.
Let me. I'll double check in. We can come back.
Well,
to that
I mean,
at some
Shinji
point.
Mikami worked on Resident Evils up through 4. Did he work on 5 as well?
no. You
Right.
can tell.
4
You
was
can
the last
tell
one.
that he
Because
worked on 5.
after that, that's when he went to Evil Within.
Right. So he left the studio, and that's when he started working on Evil Within.
Right.
But yeah, 2, like I said, my personal opinion, Capcom was in a rough spot. They really stepped up on Resident Evil 2 Remake.
Okay.
You can tell that the
It shows.
people who worked on this game really cared a lot about the source material. They cared a lot about the game, and you can tell when you play it. The level of detail in that game
Oh, it's phenomenal.
is just completely phenomenal.
And we're not
the
even
way
talking
they
about character models. I mean, just the way the environment is just created.
Yeah, and
They
again,
kind of
there's
cheated. I mean, they did kind of cheat with the pre-rendered, but it's still implemented so well that it looks amazing.
not only that, but the way the redesign on some of the things, making it practical, making it like a real police station instead of like this huge, museum maze.
Right. I mean, you can see the elements of the museum, but you can see where it's practical for them to use certain offices as a police station.
That you can actually get to the second story from the front lobby without needing an emergency
Which would make
ladder.
sense in a real building.
Right.
Right. That level of detail I really appreciate in that game. And I have to tip my hat to the developers on that because they did a phenomenal job. Leon, I felt he felt like a real police officer, not like in the second one where he was just kind of like this whiny kid.
Yeah, he's kind of a goober in the first
He's
one.
kind of a goober, but he actually conducted himself like I would think a police officer would, like somebody who's been trained as a police officer. That level of detail like that, I really appreciated.
You were saying, Frank.
I don't know. What was I saying?
I don't know. You always chime in.
I'm sorry. I just love the series so much, and also I talk a lot, so it doesn't help.
That's why we're
You
here.
do.
I think I played the most Resident Evil out of all of us. So I'll let Geno go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go too in depth. It's got elements of everything that everyone said. So
just tell us, what have you played and what have you finished?
So I played, and a lot of this is some, because I haven't done all of it, just because I'm the worst at
Completing games?
completing games, probably. Yeah, so of course I finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. I'm in the middle of remake right now because I just started it a few weeks ago. And I really haven't played like a lot of the side stuff, so I haven't gotten to Revelations yet. Haven't done any of the gun games, none of that. The Gaiden, I haven't done that. So yeah, mostly I've done a lot of the mainline games, and the only one I really haven't finished is 0 and Code Veronica. So those would be the ones. But I think 7, honestly, I think 7 is probably one of my favorite experiences, one of my favorite video game experiences of my entire life. I played it on VR, it was amazing, I mean, just incredible. I was sick every night for weeks playing it, but I loved every minute of it, so that would be me.
So you haven't finished 0. You're playing the GameCube version, I take it.
Yeah.
But what about Code Veronica? Which version are you playing?
I'll be playing GameCube.
Oh, you'll do the GameCube
probably
version
that one. Do that
Code
one.
Veronica?
Unless they remake that too, and then I'll play that.
They did port it. They have it on a PS2 Classic on PS4, which I would recommend playing that version because it is, going through HDMI.
Through HDMI.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I bought it.
Do not play the Resident Evil Code Veronica HD quote unquote on PS3, the PSN version.
Oh no, that's shit.
It looks awful.
It looks
really
bad.
It looks like somebody took the gamma and put it at max and then mastered it.
Yeah.
And said this is an HD version. I mean that's what it looks like to me. The brightness is just super high. The colors are kind of unbalanced. I don't know what kind of HD nonsense that they were agreeing upon, but do not play that version. Either play the original, play any version but that PS3 PSN version.
I think probably one of my favorite. Obviously we're big fans of 2 and 3, but I think 2 obviously. But then 3 also I have like special memories of too because I remember at that point when that came out, still tied to the hip with my band. What I did to play video games at that time, I had a friend of mine who like modded my PS1, and so I would just go and we would rent games and burn them, and that's how I first played Resident Evil 3. I had a burned copy, which today I wash my hands of it, but at the time, I had like this spool of games that I could play, and it worked. That time I didn't have any money at all. So
when we were young and we didn't care.
Yeah, well, I've paid for it ever since.
Many times over.
Yes.
All right, Frank.
Okay, so I'll make this quick because I've already been talking a lot. So Resident Evil 0 started, got up to where the train crashes, then I stopped, never went back to it, kind of lost interest. Funnily enough, the original, the first one, I didn't beat until about 3 years ago.
The original Resident Evil.
The original Resident Evil. I beat the director's cut.
But you're talking about the PS1 original.
The PS1 original, yes sir, that one. I played through that one, I'd say probably like 10, 15 times. I don't know, something like that. 2, I played a lot, actually, thanks to James and our friend Mike, because they both had copies of that, and then at points I would borrow their PlayStations, and I would play that game a lot. A lot.
3?
2.
2. Oh, yeah, well.
And then same with 3. I remember actually when James had got it, because that same day we went to my house and we popped it in and we put like the Game Shark code right away because I want to see all the weapons that were available, which was really awesome. 3 is, when we get to favorite games, I'll talk about that more. I played through 3 a lot. Actually, I just finished it again this week on my Vita.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that 4 is the one I've played the most by far because I was actually deployed overseas. The game came in January. When I came back home, which was almost a whole year later, that's all I did for a month. I played through Resident Evil 4 over and over and over again because I loved it so much. Let's see, Code Veronica, I played through that a lot. I really like Code Veronica. I think it's probably the hardest of the classic Resident Evils until you learn how to item management. That's probably the most challenging thing for that one. We do need to do a playthrough of that, by the way, just so you guys can see the ridiculous story, because that's when it goes, balls to the wall, crazy, there's like cross-dressing and there's knights and all kinds of stuff.
When you start to look at like how crazy Resident Evil 6 is, you can see where the inspiration starts to come from.
Well,
Veronica got pretty wacky.
Yeah, 6 is outlandish, but Code Veronica was just, you're in Antarctica and there's ants and there's twincest and all kinds of weird things going on.
Oh, we're back on 6, are we?
Definitely looking forward to this one.
You know what? 6 is going to be the punching bag.
Yeah. 5, played a lot. Played with James, played with Bobby, played on my own a lot. I think I finished that game probably about 15 to 20 times because that one is really fun to play. Really, really fun to play. 6, I already told you all. 7, I started. I did play the beginning hour demo. Actually, I played that with Bobby.
Yeah.
That was really fun. And I played all the updates up to where you could actually escape the house. 7, I could not get past about the first 45 minutes because of motion sickness. I have this weird thing. Certain games just I can't play them because the movement just makes me.
Yeah, I don't
nauseous.
normally get motion sickness, but watching somebody play that, I was getting a little dizzy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then kind of taking a step back, I have played Outbreak, both 1 and File 2, not every single scenario. I really wish that they had remade that or remastered it.
Yeah.
And instead of this Project Resistance, like Dead by Daylight nonsense kind of style gameplay. Those are still really fun to play. Actually, Bobby and I had talked about it last week about how there are still servers up. So once we can get...
Fan servers.
Yes, fan servers. There are still fan servers up to be able to play it online, which is the best way to play it because playing it on your own, the AI is terrible. The loading times are awful, even when you install it on a hard drive, at least on a PS2 hard drive.
It's recommended that the best way to play it actually is through emulation. So you get your, I forget what the PS2 emulator, I think it's just PS2EX.
Mm-hmm.
And you run the emulator there and emulate it and then connect to the fan servers and then they'll connect you there. Just because you also have the faster loading times with the emulation. And then you can also upscale
Yeah,
it.
and I was going to say, I think you can upscale the graphics too.
Right.
Played through Deadly Silence. I've beaten that a couple times. Actually, I tried playing the Rebirth mode where you have the first-person knife minigame, and I'm not really a fan of it. I don't know. I think I'm just used to playing the classic version. So the Rebirth mode I wasn't a huge fan of. I think it was just very gimmicky. Played through Remake. I've only played through 3 out of the 4 scenarios. I've played through both of Claire's. First of Leon's. Oof, that game is awesome. It's amazing. But Mr. X is just such a pain in the ass when, you're like, all right, I got to go get this. Oh, man, he's here. And then you got to take a lap. Or at least that's what I do. I mean, I haven't become so proficient at that game where I can beat it in like under an hour. But
yeah.
That game is amazing. I'm so looking to Resident Evil 3 Remake. Yeah. I cannot wait for that game.
Yeah,
definitely agree
because
with you on that one.
Resident Evil 3 is probably what I think was the best of the classic Resident Evil games. I mean, Nemesis was such a great boss. They finally kind of perfected the different zombie models. So you saw different, you saw women zombies, zombies with long pants, zombies with shorts, bald zombies, zombies with long hair. Those classic PS1 polygons. They had the best zombies. Yeah. And that one had a lot of replayability because you would have to play it each time to unlock each epilogue, which there are 9 of them, so you definitely had to play it 9 times to unlock each epilogue. It had the Mercenaries mode. That's when it first came out, which was awesome.
Yeah.
So amazing. I also really liked it in 4. I don't know. Did you guys ever play the Mercenaries in 4?
Mm-hmm.
That
No.
you should.
Yeah,
It
really
is
is
so
fun.
good.
I had no idea there's a Mercenaries in 4.
Yes, because
I loved Mercenaries in 3. Like
Yeah.
that. God, that was great. Yeah, and 3.
But I only play as Mikhail because
I didn't even know Mercenaries went back to 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's probably where it started, right?
Yeah, that's
where
where
it
first
started.
appeared. And then it was in 4 where I think there's 5 stages. Hold on, there's the village, and there's the castle, then there's the Krauser stage, and then the waterfront. So 4, but you have 5 characters to play as. You have Leon, Ada, Krauser, Hunk, and Wesker. Yeah, play that when you finally get around to finishing 4.
Finishing 4.
So yeah, that was not quick at all. I was full of shit.
You know what I forgot?
As is usually the case.
You know what I forgot to mention was the Wii Resident Evils.
Are we talking about the Resident Evil remake on Wii or the
No,
Because
no.
0 and the remake were on Wii.
No.
Oh, you're talking about
Umbrella
Chronicles
and
Dark
Dark
Side
Side. We
Chronicles.
totally
Dark Side.
skipped over those.
Yeah,
I
we
can't believe
actually
we
did
skipped
skip over those.
I played through those quite a bit.
Yeah.
Umbrella I played a lot.
Yeah.
Dark Side I still haven't actually
Oh,
finished.
I love Dark Side. Dark Side Chronicles probably one of my favorite ones on that system. It's an on-rail shooter using the Wiimote. For those that haven't played it, but Dark Side Chronicles, which is the second one, actually goes over probably what was it 1, 2, and 3?
No. So
No, 2 and 3.
Umbrella goes
1.
1. Oh no, it goes 0,
0. Then
1,
Yeah.
3, and then a brand new chapter. Dark Side goes through 2, Code Veronica, and then its own chapter.
And its own chapter. Yeah.
The interesting thing is that 3 in Umbrella Chronicles, they actually use the Outbreak layout of Raccoon City.
Oh, interesting.
As opposed to, the original one.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know
Interesting.
why, but
Maybe because they just needed the assets.
models.
Those
Yeah.
were fun games. Did anybody else play those?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I never finished either
Which
one.
one?
Yo, speaking of which,
Dark Side Chronicles.
Oh yeah, they were great. Yeah.
play it on PS3. The HD versions are nicer. I mean, for obvious reasons.
You still have to
If you
use
can
the,
get a move, yeah.
Yeah, the move.
You gotta get a move.
But yeah, I forgot to mention those. I actually really enjoyed those.
I thought you were going to talk about the archives, which are terrible conversions because they only allow, or at least maybe I'm just really bad at the settings, but they only allow you to play in the 4x3 output.
They do. That's what they're.
Yeah,
that's the only way you can
it's
play them.
garbage. It's garbage. I actually bought those and then I sold those, and I rarely sell games, but that's how dumb I thought.
Yeah, those conversions were bad. They're just bad
Which
ports
ones?
all around.
The archives.
Oh, the archives. Oh, yeah.
Stop
were
playing on your
0.
phone. We're still
I'm
conducting this
listening. I'm here.
podcast. Now this is the second time you've been like, what? What are we talking about?
I'm here. I'm in it.
No, you're not.
Oh, let's
So
not
yeah, I
talk
forgot
about
to
phones.
mention those are actually good mentions though,
Yes.
because
I
they
totally skipped over those, and I have.
they are fun to play, especially with another person.
Yeah.
That's a good little party game to play with another person.
Yeah, in a way, I mean, it's basically their version of House of the Dead,
Yeah.
but with the Resident Evil lore plus the additional end chapters.
Plus, you get to see like back then before 2 remake, you get to see, basically Resident Evil 2 play out in more of a high definition.
Yes, the cutscenes and
The
everything.
cutscenes and everything. Yeah, the cutscenes. Even the
Remember dealing
going
with
through
the
Raccoon
alligator?
City too.
We had to kill the alligator in
Yeah.
the sewer. God, it was a pain in the ass.
But
So.
yeah, those were fun to play with.
Yeah, those are really good. And then while we were talking, particularly when Frank finished up his thing, it occurred to me that I do have a copy of Resident Evil 2, the original, on Dreamcast.
Hey, that's actually a pretty valuable copy there, sir.
Yeah, I only have the disc. I don't have the complete set, but I do have that, and it just occurred to me because I hardly ever, because the Dreamcast that I have was gifted to me by one of my students when I left the school I was at, and so as a going away gift, he gave me his Dreamcast along with the collection of games, and one of the games in there was Resident Evil 2. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really good thing to have. So I do have a copy of that. But I guess we're moving on to our final question for the night, for the early morning. So, final question. Favorite Resident Evil? Maybe pick your first. We did talk about doing our top 3, in no particular order, just our 3 Resident Evils, because it is hard. There's so many good games in this series. I mean, I'll go ahead and go first, but obviously the Resident Evil. Well, that's not what I was going to start with, but Frank's already thrown in my face. Resident Evil 2, obviously the N64 version because I started off with that one, but especially the remake.
Oh,
I mean, I'm just kind of putting all the Resident Evil 2s together, and if I had to pick one that I probably would easily go back and replay, would be that remake of 2. I don't know if I'd be able to go back and play, tank controls, old school style of the originals, because I haven't really gone back and played them, so only time will tell. If I do, what? You're
But-
pointing at me.
Yeah, but you know what? Resident Evil 2 on 64 is the first time they had full 3D controls.
Where they have the full 3D controls,
So that's
right.
probably why you liked it so much. Too.
Maybe. I mean, I never had a problem because, I mean, the Resident Evil remake on GameCube, which is also my top 3, did do traditional tank controls.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have any issues with that. Same thing with Resident Evil 0. And I didn't have any issues with that. So, anyway, with that being said, so Resident Evil 2 remake, the Resident Evil remake, and then I guess probably the third one on the list would have to be Resident Evil 4, which obviously is very different compared to the original Resident Evils. I think it did well bringing Resident Evil into the modern generation while still retaining a lot of the horror themes about it. But at the same time, I can see where people are kind of divided on it because, especially like when it came out, everyone loved it. But now, several years later, you have groups of people where they divided on Resident Evil 4 and feel that it was the downfall of Resident Evil, which at the time anyway, now that it's bouncing back, especially with 7 and the remake, because I know a lot of people felt that even though 5 could be very fun, it wasn't terrifying like the original Resident Evils. It wasn't like a true horror, survival horror game. And especially with 6, it was very action oriented, which is why a lot of people disliked it.
Very
but even then, it wasn't,
bullshit-oriented.
and it wasn't very well done in a lot of ways.
We'll
So-
not speak of Resident Evil 6 in this podcast. Thank you.
So that's the last I'll mention of Resident Evil 6, just not to upset anyone else. But those are my top 3 Resident Evils.
Can I disagree with you a little bit on Resident Evil 5 as being horror?
So let me step back because what I said that in the sense of that's people's interpretation right now.
Yeah. I get
Okay.
it.
But having played through Resident Evil 5 with Frank, I also didn't get that horror experience because there was nothing horrific about him giving me everything and then moving through it. However, I can appreciate, well, no, because I still enjoyed the game. I could still appreciate that when those first trailers came out of the actual Resident Evil 5, the idea that you could have a game where there were zombies out during the daytime and you would still be terrified or you would still find yourself in, like, to me, what made Resident Evil 4 so good is the tension that was created of the scenarios you were caught in, not so much because there were scary monsters. It was the tension that built up, and 5 had that tension.
Yeah.
You know, that tension was still there. So
And
go ahead.
I
Well,
agree.
with-
I agree with you on that.
With 5, it puts yourself in the scenario or in the world that it's building, right? You're in a foreign country that you don't really know very well, right? Imagine being in this country in Africa and all of a sudden all of the townspeople want to hang you up by your entrails.
So you're talking about every time I go visit Japan. That's exactly what it feels like as the American.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's just imagine that kind of. To me, that's horrifying. Imagine like this, just this gang of people that in a place that you're not familiar with, and just they want to just hang you and strew you up, and to me that's horrifying. To me, there's something very unsettling about that first. That when you're first introduced into that game, into the world, where they're doing a public execution, and they sick the townspeople on you. To me, that's in a reality that would be a very horrifying experience, and that's kind of how I felt with 5. Just to kind of imagine that scenario in real life. Probably be very, very unsettling to think about.
So, would 5 be in your top 3?
I think so. Yeah, maybe.
Along with what else?
Or is it my turn for top 3 now?
Why not?
Since I interrupted you.
You're talking. Well, no. You carried off from pretty much where I was finishing up. I already talked about my top 3, so you didn't interrupt me. Don't worry.
So
let's go with yours now.
Top 3 is going to be difficult because, like I said, there's a lot of good games in this series. Right off the bat, I have to give it to 2 and 2 remake. I think 2 really the 2 in itself really defined the series. And of course, that one again is the one I played the most. The remake again, I have to appreciate the care and the love that the developers did on that game and trying to recreate the original story as best as they could, and So yeah, that. And I'm kind of torn between four and five. I'm gonna be torn in between those two because four, like I said, it was different, but it played very well. The controls are very intuitive. The story a little off the wall, but it worked for what it was. Five, again, five's gonna differ because you have to have the other person playing with you, and preferably somebody who's competent in the game as well. Having played through five with another person and strategizing, look, you're gonna pick this up, or you cover me while I take care of this. There's a very fun element to that. So yeah, I'm kind of torn between 4 and 5 on that aspect.
When you and Frank played 4 and 5 together, was it fresh for both of you guys?
Just five.
Did I say 4 and 5?
Yes.
When you guys played 5 together, was it fresh for both of you, or had one of you already beaten it?
No, I think I had already played through it. Was it fresh for you?
I attempted to play it.
That's right. Because you were
myself.
frustrated with the AI,
Yeah.
and I was like, we'll play through it together. We played through it twice. We played on veteran, and then we played on professional, and we vowed never to play it on professional.
But you guys beat it on
Yeah,
professional.
we did.
Yes, we did.
We did. We actually got through it. Like I said, I got frustrated with it. And realizing that it was meant to be played with another person, we had to Frank, you know what, we're going to sit down and we're going to play through this. And that helped out a lot. That actually made it more enjoyable. It's like a difference between night and day with that game. Like I said, I was getting frustrated. You take one hit and Shadow's right there spraying you with a first aid spray.
Are you okay?
Yeah, and she uses the whole thing.
Just like that too.
Like the whole thing on you, and you're like, no, and you're trying to use her as a pack mule, right?
Yeah, that's all she is.
So you're just throwing
she's
stuff
a
at her, just to hold
chest.
here, hold this, but she wastes everything that you give her.
No, that's not true. What I always did was give her ammo for weapons that she didn't have, so that she wouldn't use it, and then I just go up like she's this, she's this portable, chest where I can. Oh, okay, give me this. I'm like, I'll hold on to the health. You hold on to everything that you won't waste.
Because you learn that real quick that she'll waste it.
You're a bad AI.
She will waste all of your good stuff. Don't ever give her health. Don't ever give her ammo that you need. Because she'll waste
for
it.
weapons.
Yeah.
It's funny. We keep saying she's a terrible AI, but it sounds more and more like she truly would do what another human being would do. So maybe she's the perfect AI. All right, Geno, Frank, which one of you guys would like to go next?
Frank. Okay, Frank wants me to go first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I would say 2 and 2 remake are just kind of like one together, but I honestly think remake is probably this series I keep saying it's one of the best experiences I've had in my life. So the remake of 2 and 2 are one of the best video game experiences I've had. So I would definitely say that's up there. And then 3 also. And then finally, and this is tough, 4 and 7. I would say 4 because Leon. And then, but then 7 because it was just so visceral. So we'll leave it at that. I'll leave that at a tie, really.
And just so everyone knows, we didn't talk about this when Geno brought up 7 earlier. He played through the entirety of it in VR.
Sick as a dog, but it was worth every night of like lying down wanting to vomit like at the end. It was okay because it was just so incredible. So I would do it again. Absolutely.
I'm fortunate where I did do it for an hour and a half in VR solid. How long were your sessions when you played?
A couple hours at least every night for weeks.
I don't know. The hour and a half I felt fine. Like I never felt any dizzy. I wondered if I'd be able to do it. Because for me, part of the reason I've been holding off on playing 7 is I want to get that VR headset so I can get it.
Yeah, and people who play it without the VR, I'm sure it's good, but not like with that VR. That VR, you're there. So I loved every minute of it. And it does go on. I will say that it does go on just a hair too long because by the time you reach the end portion of it, you're kind of, you've had, or at least I was kind of, because I've been in that VR helmet for weeks. And so when it throws a final twist at you, you're like, oh man, like I don't know if I have the fortitude to, and I did, but at the end I was happy to take a break.
Well, no, and I've seen that because even though I haven't played it, I have watched a full playthrough of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I see, especially at the end where it seems kind of drag, and it's like,
it does drag
okay,
a little bit.
Let's get it.
But it still has, that quality. So it's, you know, but yeah, and then 4. I mean, it's hard to say because 4 was just so good.
Yeah.
You know? And I will say this. I mean, everyone says it's like the death. 4 is like the death of the survival horror. But the first time I picked up 4, I think I picked it up at the demo, like at EB Games, and to me, that felt like playing an old 80s horror movie. It felt like Devil's Reign, or it felt like just something really low budget and really kind of terrifying. I really loved it. So I think 4 is not or even 5. I agree with you. I think 5 really is scary. There are parts in there that are really, really terrifying. So I think really the series really only went off rails on 6.
Yeah.
I would say that's the only misstep it's had, and that I think it's felt cohesive the whole way through.
Mm-hmm.
So
Even Survivor.
Well, I mean, as far as like the mainline series, up to
Okay,
6.
mainline series.
Yeah. I think when we're talking about mainline
that's my
series,
take.
because I know we all have some you guys have talked about how the revelations aren't that great.
Yeah.
Where the first one's fine.
I know. I like the first one. I think
Right,
the
right,
first
well, the
one is
first one's-
enjoyable.
But it's not like you're like raving about it either.
Yeah.
Right.
It got really good critical acclaim that I don't agree with. I'm like, to me, it's like a 7 out of 10 game.
It's
Right.
an
6.5
okay
cents.
Resident
And like,
Evil.
you know, then we have disagreements about 0. Like I personally really
Yeah.
like 0.
Yeah.
But none of us here say any of those games but 6 was a misstep in the series.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a testament to the series itself.
Yeah.
You know that. Yeah, there's missteps, and there's going to be missteps in a series that lasts this long.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Yeah, the
it's
series
all
is
about the
what?
fun factor.
The series is like at least 3 years old, right? At least 3. It's been around for at least 3.
It's been around a while, but it's all about the fun factor. And at the end of the day, do you enjoy playing the game?
Well, obviously,
Right.
since we have all attempted
Yeah.
to replay them at multiple.
And so
different
that's how I gauge it. You know, did we have fun playing the game? Yes. Did we have fun playing through the series? Yes. Has there been some missteps? Of course.
Okay, but here's my argument. And I remember I had this conversation with you
Mhm.
when we were talking about 6, because you were ranting and raving about how awful it was, which you were totally justified in doing so.
Okay, if you
But-
bring up this comment now, is it going to veer us off further? Because we do need to finish with your top 3.
Okay, no, it's not going to get that far off.
Okay,
But
let's
just,
It's a little-
but James was saying like how there's missteps in the thing, and I'm like, but if you look overall, this series hasn't really had a lot of missteps.
No.
0, though I didn't enjoy it, was still pretty good.
There's lots of people that
1
enjoy it.
and remake, 2 and 2 remake, 3, 4, 5, 7. So really, the odd sheep is really, or the black sheep that's just not good is 6 for the main line, and that's my argument.
And you also have to understand that at the time, Capcom was going through a shift where they're trying to westernize their Scheme series for a different audience. I mean, we saw it with Devil May Cry when they
Right.
released DMC, and even though I think DMC itself is a fine game,
Yep.
it's not in line with what people were expecting from a Devil May Cry game, which is why they went back when they did Devil May Cry 5. So, I mean, that was more so Capcom saying, well, let's make the Resident Evil game this way because we think this is the audience that wants it. And it turns out they were wrong. And they've gone back and changed it to an audience that does enjoy the game. So that's why Resident Evil 2 Remake is the way it is. I mean, they could have remade it and done it exactly like they had done 6. But instead, they're like, okay, well, let's look at what the people do enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's what they targeted. And it worked out for them. And hopefully with 3, they'll be able to hit the same marks.
And we also have to, look at the fact that Resident Evil the 2 remake really revitalized Capcom.
Well, I'd argue that 7 did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
That's another conversation for another time.
Yeah,
We
probably.
really veer off for that.
Yeah, but
Well, 7 revitalized Resident Evil as a horror
Yes.
game.
as a horror game, yeah, because it was starting to
Horror
go off the
series.
rails a little bit, and they really stepped up their game on 7. And then everything after that has been on point.
But you still haven't given us your 3 favorite
We're still waiting on Frank's 3 favorites.
Yeah.
Well, I was letting
Frank
you
is
finish
the
'cause
street.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I kept interrupting him, so I needed to shut my stupid mouth up. Okay, so funnily enough, as much as I play Resident Evil 4, it's not even in my top 3.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 2 is probably in my top 3 because I loved horror and I loved zombies, especially in the 90s. So I mean, James, Mike, and I watched so many zombie movies,
Yeah.
like so many crappy, stupid,
There's some of the most
terrible-
horrible zombie movies.
But had zombies in it, so we just ate it up. So I remember getting it was a trailer disc on Mac of all things, and it had a demo or just gameplay of like 20 seconds of Resident Evil 2, and I watched that thing like for 2 hours straight. I was just so blown away. I'm like, this game looks amazing because at that time I hadn't played 1. I knew about it because I had read all about it in GamePro. 2 just fascinated so much. When I finally actually got to play it, I played the hell out of it. Love 2. 3, absolutely. It's definitely my favorite of classic Resident Evil, survival horror, PS1 era. You know, that original. Oh, it's just amazing. And then after that, I'd probably say the remake. Because the remake, I specifically bought a GameCube to get the remake. And that was
a remake of 1.
And yes, remake of 1, I apologize. Because I like 2's remake a lot. It's just, it's probably right on the fringe of being in the top 3, but it's not on top 3 for me yet. But
it has Leon.
the Resident Evil remake on GameCube is the first time I felt really scared for Resident Evil as a series. Like, that game, it scared me to actually play it. Because, you know, the zombies opening the doors, the Crimson Heads, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that was actually scary to me. I'm like, ooh, I was tense to play it. I mean, now it means nothing, you know what I mean? And I will disagree with pretty much everybody here. 4 is where it went off the rails. 4 is the most fun to play, in my opinion, but that's when the series should have been called Biohazard at that point. Because it wasn't scary to me at all, which is why I played the hell out of it. It was super fun to play. It's still I still play that game as often as I can, but like Chainsaw, the Ganados, like I'd say it was tense, but it was not scary. Right. The village in the first part, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm running around, and I'm like, oh, that's it, okay, and then it lost all tension from then on for me. So that's my take on it. 5 was not scary. 6 was scary in a different way. And then 7, I have not, like I said, I haven't been able to play it. But the Outbreaks, I think, are still underrated. I really want those.
Can we talk about the Outbreaks a little bit?
Again?
Even again.
Well, we kind of touched on them already.
We touched
Well,
a little bit
and
on
I was going to say something about the Outbreaks, that it's really hard for people to appreciate the Outbreaks because the technology at the time to network and play online with someone wasn't really that good. And for people that had good service, there weren't a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so it made it difficult for people to play that, which is why they go underappreciated, because there's no way to play them, which would be nice to see, like you said, if Capcom would, you know, redo those. Even if they just did a straight up port and
allowed for online playing.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's something I wanted to bring up regarding this earlier. Okay, so before the remake of 2 was officially announced, Capcom had registered the domain for Resident Evil 2, which I told you about, right?
Yep.
And they did that for Outbreak not last year. Yeah, I think late 2018, early 2019. So you're hearing it first. Either I'm completely full of shit, which is the more likely scenario, but maybe they are actually going to either remake Outbreak or port it. So you're hearing it first. They did register the domain for RE Outbreak, just like they did for Resident Evil 2 before they announced that they were remaking it.
My argument, though, is going to be that with the what is that component called? An RE3 coming out with RE3,
the Project Resistance.
Project Resistance. That I really do feel that
why wouldn't it be like RE Resistance or P Resistance?
Because one, you pick up the domain so you don't lose them.
Well,
Because otherwise someone else has to buy it up and then you pay for it.
Was 2 already going to be lost at that point?
No, but here's my thing is that you buy the domain
Yes.
because maybe initially their intention was to redo Outbreak.
And instead they veered across. They ended up just fucking it up and turning it into...
Well, yeah.
Turning it into a Dead by Daylight
as you often
or Evolve
do,
or all that.
You've already assumed it's going to be terrible.
I'm not assuming it's going to be terrible. It just looks terrible.
It just looks terrible.
You know what? Honestly, it'll probably be fun to play with us. That's one thing I will say.
Yeah, because we're just
I wanted to play Resident Evil Outbreak.
And I get that. I totally get that. You want the original format. You want to play with that. Because the asymmetric survival horror is very different than what the Outbreak was.
But, we're at a period where online gaming is so big right now. Why wouldn't you want to have a cooperative Resident Evil like that?
Well, let me also say this, because they did attempt to do that with Umbrella Core.
That's another one we didn't mention.
Or no, was it Raccoon City? What the hell was it called?
No, it was Umbrella Core.
It was Umbrella Core?
Yeah.
Oh, but Umbrella Core it's a head-to-head.
Well, Umbrella Core, there's a little history behind that. I have a little bit of... I've looked at it a little bit. Umbrella Core was actually meant to start getting Capcom into MLG.
Oh, that's right.
So they wanted to get into MLG really bad.
MLG standing for
Major League Gaming. And so mostly the competitive gaming market, and that's what Umbrella Core was for. They were trying to do that. It was made specifically for that.
Right.
It's just that so many people just did not care for it at all.
Well, what was interesting is they brought in people who had worked on SOCOM.
Yeah, that's true.
In order to develop that game, and it just came out really poor.
Operation Raccoon City. Oh, I wonder why we didn't talk about that one.
That's the one I was thinking.
Yeah, that's the other one.
Speaking of SOCOM,
talk about retconning an entire story.
They already know that you already know that's not canon.
Yeah,
not like where they made they screwed up the canon with Zero.
With Zero, but yeah, completely forgot to mention those. Mostly because they're so forgettable.
But again, those games came out.
What games again? Because I already.
Those games came out at the time where Resident Evil 6 came out, where Capcom was trying to capture a market that they thought was more viable, and either they didn't have the people in place to capture it, or they didn't know what it was about those areas that people liked.
Have any of you ever seen or gameplay of Umbrella Core?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's bad. Even from like a mechanical standpoint on that game, it's
clumsy.
Yeah, it's very clunky, clumsy. The way that it presents itself doesn't make much sense. The character model doesn't make much sense. The way they hold the gun is like this, up against their face.
I'm really glad that you're doing this
for the podcast.
Listening.
So the way, if you look at the character model,
in your head.
If you look at the character model of the way the character plays in Umbrella Core, they actually hold the gun up to the side of their head, close to their ear, which is very strange. It's just very jarring.
I mean, maybe they like the sound of their weapon.
Yeah,
as it goes off.
I think they have like a shield or something that they
they have a shield and that stupid like curved blade that they do for melee attacks.
Again, they're trying to market it as like this MLG kind of competitive gameplay.
Well, they were. They're not doing it anymore.
It didn't.
Now you can buy it for like $1.99. And I would say, why would you waste $5?
I doubt very seriously any of the servers are up. Maybe one server. If you can find an entire team of people to play that game, I applaud you.
I would not. Why would you be playing that?
All right. Well, I think we're good there. I think otherwise we just continue talking about Resident Evil all night, and we are.
And what's wrong with that?
We are
2 hours.
Well, we're pushing 2 hours, yeah.
Okay.
For the podcast. I mean, we can keep talking about it after we're done, but I just want to go ahead and close this out.
If you want to see our typewriters, You're more than welcome to go to Geno because I'm not gonna open mine.
Mine's not open either, so
I'm
you'll
sure
have to
I'll
wait until we open the museum,
I'm sure I'll find an image online, guys.
like we planned.
I think we'll be okay.
Or you can watch the relaxing end.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
When he
That
puts his
unboxing.
hands all over. Oh.
With his white gloves.
Oh.
Speaking of which, that dude's his presentation is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Cheap plug for relaxing end.
Yeah.
There you go. All right then. Well, that's it for tonight. We did Resident Evil. We do not have yet a plan for our next episode, but I'm sure it'll be almost as exciting as this one was.
Yes.
Oh, hey,
if you've
and we
lasted
actually
this
did-
whole time, hold on. If you've lasted this whole time, thank you. We appreciate it because this is so much fun.
Well, for the record, don't be surprised if there is some heavy editing to this
Yes.
episode.
And,
Yes.
and we did do a Resident Evil themed Halloween party last year.
Yeah,
Yes.
we
That
did.
is true. And we all dressed
are
up.
fans. We all dressed
We
up.
all dressed up.
Yeah, we all dressed up.
Maybe we'll show pictures. We're not sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can throw the one picture in there real quick. I portrayed
Barry Burton.
Barry Burton. James was
I was Hunk.
The
Hunk.
hunk.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
James, and that's just you in real life.
Yeah.
But the character's name is also Hunk.
Frank because he has large arms. Decided to be
Yes, with my large arms.
Yes.
well compared to the rest of us. I mean,
Well, he was Resident Evil
he was the
I was
original
original.
I was remake Chris.
remake Chris.
remake Chris.
Who does not have large arms.
And as we said earlier, Geno was Leon S. Kennedy.
Which he pulled off very well. I
The S
admit.
stands for sexy.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. I would definitely do it again. We did talk about when we have our
Epcon.
thing here in
Might
town
do
that
it.
we would dress up
Might do it
again.
Yeah.
So
Just as a side note too, we did have we had a Sheva.
That's
had
right.
We
Which
had a
was
Claire.
Our friend Mike, who edited the last episode,
Yeah.
actually, he dressed up as
he dressed
Sheva,
up as Sheva.
and he did a really good job.
He did a really good
Yeah.
job.
We
We
had a
had a
Wesker.
Claire. We had a Wesker.
Yeah.
We had
Kendo.
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 Yeah, we had a Kendo.
Kendo.
Ben was really good as Kendo. I mean,
We even had the guy from Resident Evil. What is his name? The guy who sells stuff.
The merchant.
Oh, the merchant.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we had the
Our
merchant
other
too.
friend,
well,
Mike,
the merchant.
Mike Prime was merchant.
So yeah,
What are you buying?
and the house was actually decorated with boards on the windows.
Yeah, we had boards. We actually printed
Police
out
tape.
all the notes
Oh,
from,
yeah, and-
from the remake. We had
and
them in
then
a binder. We
Ben
had them all
was
over
the
house.
Ben was Kendo.
Ben was Kendo.
oh duh, okay, that's right, Kendo from RE2.
So yeah, we're actual fans. Just
I
in
mean,
case you
kinda.
questioned it.
I don't know, just a little.
If this 3-hour, wasn't long enough for you to believe us, and please believe
Dude,
us.
we haven't even gotten into it. We just
We
been talking
haven't.
about
This is
collecting.
definitely
Yeah.
on the surface.
We have just gone to service.
Yeah.
We
We
haven't
just scratched the surface of everything
like
Resident
the
Evil.
one thing we promised is we would not speak our disdain about the movie series.
No,
Which we have
no.
completely omitted.
Well,
and
hold
we're
on,
not
admitted all
gonna
that.
include.
And I've read the books too.
Oh, I read the books too. I read all
Yeah.
7 of them.
Yeah,
Oh.
I've read the
No,
books.
there's more than that. Hold on.
Yeah,
Hold on.
there's
I
a
just-
lot of
Let me
books.
just count really quick.
No.
There's novels.
Because there's the Umbrella Conspiracy, which is the first one. There's Calvin Cove, which is the second one, which is
I'm
not
sorry, guys.
a game.
It's gonna keep going.
Yeah.
It's like it's never gonna
There's
end.
3, which is City of the Dead, which is 2. Then there's Underworld, which is also not part of the official canon.
Yeah.
Then there's Nemesis. Then there's Code Veronica and 0 Hours. So yeah, there are
Underworld?
7.
Like the Kate Beckinsale movie.
Well, it's Resident Evil Underworld. But one thing I will say about the books is that they introduce a character called Trent, who's kind of like the mastermind behind Umbrella's downfall. And he's actually the cool character to follow because there's certain points, like in Resident Evil 3, how Carlos just shows up, but all these coincidences, they explain them in the books that it's this guy who's helping out all these characters. So that's pretty cool the way they incorporated that.
Well,
Don't read the books; they're fucking terrible.
Yeah, they're not.
That's
written
why I
very-
read all 7
Yeah,
of them.
they're not written well.
he read
They're
read
not
them
written
for us.
very well.
So on that note, we'd like to thank you all for listening tonight,
Yeah.
or today, or the morning, whenever it is that you're listening.
And thank you, Bobby, for having me.
And
Oh,
having
thanks
us-
for coming in, man. I appreciate it. Thank you guys all. You make it worthwhile. Yours fandom with mine makes this all enjoyable, and together, I'm sure we will have a complete Resident Evil collection.
Yes, and
Though I'm sure Geno and Frank will have one. And when they open
never
up
be
their
complete.
museum,
Yes.
It will never be complete.
That's true.
It won't, but we'll break ground anyway.
Well, thank you guys, and you guys have a wonderful evening. Goodbye. Now, do you want to go out and play some Resident Evil? Good. Since we recorded this episode, Frank was true to his word and gave me a copy of Resident Evil 2 for the N64. Needless to say, I was very pleased. Haven't had a chance to play it yet, but I do plan to do so for one of my future Twitch streams. Speaking of RE2, we also highly recommend that you play the Resident Evil 2 remake that was released in January of last year. All Peleoneros agree that it is one hell of a game. We're also looking forward to the release of Resident Evil 3 remake coming out in April. Nemesis was terrifying enough back in 1999, so I cannot wait to see what the team at CAPCOM can do with him in 2020. Once again, we really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us rant and rave about one of our favorite series. Hope you're looking forward to our next episode on the fastest blue blur known to man, Sonic the Hedgehog. Until then, be safe and keep gaming. Peace!